Paris fell. The flag bearing the symbol of Nazi Germany flew over the Eiffel Tower. In less than 6 weeks, one of the great continental powers of Europe had completely collapsed. From the Loire River to the north, German soldiers occupied every road, train station, factory, and the heart of a nation once called the cradle of freedom. In the south, a new government, the Vichy regime, was established in the name of autonomy, but in reality it was only an obedient shadow of Berlin. The whole of France was divided in two. One half lived under the heel of occupation, the other half sank into fear, torn between loyalty and the fear of survival. On that bleak canvas, French industry became a strategic card in the hands of the invader. Nazi Germany did not only seize land, it took over factories, workers, and production lines. The goal was clear: to turn French workshops into the logistical machinery of the German war effort. Trucks, shells, engines, all were ordered to be sent toward Berlin. And to achieve that, they needed local people with power, technical skill, and influence, those willing to compromise to maintain their position and their lives. Among those ranks, the most prominent was Louis Renault, a name once honored by the French as a symbol of intelligence and patriotism. He was the man who built the Renault FT tank, the pride of the French army in the First World War. But only 20 years later, that name became a symbol of betrayal. Under German occupation, the Renault factories produced tens of thousands of trucks for the Nazi army. From a national symbol, Louis Renault gradually became a condemned man, a living proof of the fragile boundary between forced cooperation and intentional betrayal. Louis Renault, from workshop to empire. Louis Renault was born on the 12th of February, 1877, in Paris, into a wealthy bourgeois family with a tradition of business and industrial culture. His father owned a textile factory, while his mother came from an educated background, strict but encouraging her children to explore the world. From a young age, Louis showed a special fascination with machines. He often spent hours in the family workshop disassembling and reassembling engines, carefully recording every technical detail. The boy cared little for school or prestige. He was entirely captivated by the movement of the crankshaft, the explosion of the cylinders, and the precise operation of each gear. In 1898, at only 21, Louis built his first car in the shed behind his parents' villa in Billancourt. It was the Voiturette, a small four-wheeled car powered by a 1.75 horsepower de Dion-Bouton engine. The key innovation lay in the direct drive gearbox he invented himself, allowing the car to climb Montmartre Hill more easily than any competitor of the time. This invention quickly received a patent and became the foundation of the French automobile industry that followed. On that Christmas Eve, when Louis test drove the Voiturette down Lepic Street to the astonishment of onlookers, the name Renault was inscribed in the history of mechanical engineering. The initial success led Louis and his two brothers, Marcel and Fernand, to establish the Renault Frères Company in 1899. Among the three, Louis was the technical mind, while Marcel and Fernand handled administration and commerce. That combination drove the company's rapid growth. Marcel, with his adventurous spirit, became the company's main racer, entering Renault cars in numerous prestigious competitions across Europe. The resounding victories in Paris, Berlin, and Paris, Madrid not only promoted the brand, but also proved the endurance and superior speed of Renault's vehicles. Before long, Billancourt, where their factory was located, had become the most vibrant automobile production center in France. Tragedy struck in 1903 when Marcel died in a road race. The shock caused Louis to withdraw completely, abandoning all racing activities and dedicating himself fully to technology and production. Fernand, the remaining brother, retired a few years later and passed away in 1909, leaving Louis, barely in his 30s, as the sole leader of the company. From then on, he built Renault in his own way, focusing on engineering, organizing assembly line production, and tightly controlling every stage from design to sales. Many compared him to Henry Ford of France, a pioneer who was determined and exacting. Louis Renault's personality became so well known that it inspired both respect and fear among allies and rivals alike. He tolerated no mistakes, distrusted labor unions, and viewed every strike as a threat to order. The workers at Billancourt called him the Iron Giant, a nickname that referred both to his imposing stature and to his rigid, distant nature. Though criticized as authoritarian, It cannot be denied that this very strictness helped Renault become one of France's industrial symbols before the First World War. The fateful meeting in Berlin. When the Great War broke out in 1914, Louis Renault quickly turned his factory into a production center serving the army. Under his organizational direction, Billancourt produced hundreds of thousands of shell casings, aircraft engines, and heavy trucks. In particular, he created the Renault FT tank, the first tank in the world with a rotating turret capable of turning 360 degrees. This invention completely changed the art of warfare in the 20th century and contributed to the victory of the Allied forces. After the war, Louis Renault was honored as a national hero, awarded the title of Grand Officer of the Legion of Honor, and his name was mentioned as a symbol of the French industrial spirit. But behind that fame was a lonely man. Louis married late to Christiane Boulaire, a young woman 20 years his junior, who brought a touch of warmth to a life filled only with the sound of machines and factory smoke. They had one son, Jean-Louis, yet his family life still carried a sense of distance. To his employees, he was a dictator. To his friends, a quiet and unpredictable man. In the industrial world, Louis was known for his fierce rivalry with André Citroën, his greatest competitor in the automobile industry. He once openly criticized Citroën as a petty opportunist, showing his pride and bluntness that bordered on cruelty. In the 1930 seconds, Louis Renault began to take a special interest in Germany's industrial development. He admired the organization, efficiency, and economic recovery speed of the country under the new regime, believing it to be a model of industry worth learning from. In February 1935, during a visit to Berlin, he was arranged to meet Adolf Hitler. The meeting, according to witnesses, was brief, but left a strong impression on Renault. He believed that Franco-German economic cooperation could open a new era of prosperity for Europe. No one knew that this admiration for technology would later become the starting point of a dark chapter in his life, when the very Germany he once praised would return to occupy Paris and turn the Renault factories into instruments of war. That was the beginning of the tragedy of Louis Renault, a man who once elevated France's status with his mechanical genius, but was later judged by history for the choices he made in the shadows of war. The darkness of collaboration and survival. In the summer of 1940, as the German armored columns crossed the Seine and seized Paris, Louis Renault was 63 years old. His factory at Billancourt, once the pride of French industry, now lay within the area controlled by German forces. Within weeks, officers of the Wehrmacht appeared at the factory gates, demanding that the entire production system be placed under the supervision of the German Ministry of Defense. Before Renault stood a difficult choice: either let the factory be confiscated and all workers sent to Germany for forced labor, or agree to continue operations under the orders of the occupiers. He chose the second option, explaining, "If we do not give them butter, they will take the whole herd." From 1940 to 1944, the Renault factories at Billancourt, Le Mans and Choisy-le-Roi operated almost at full capacity. More than 34,000 vehicles, mainly trucks, troop carriers, and mechanical components, were produced for the German army. In industrial reports from the occupation period, Renault was regarded as a vital link in the Nazi logistical network, particularly in supplying materials to the Eastern Front. While many other factories were closed or ran out of raw materials, Renault's system maintained high production, which allowed him to keep thousands of workers employed, but also made him one of the most heavily suspected figures after the war. However, it must be understood that in such a context, every action lay between two difficult extremes: collaboration or survival. Many other French companies were also forced to serve the occupation economy, from consumer goods to war materials. Yet in Renault's case, his scale and prestige made him the most visible and vulnerable target for criticism. The French resistance viewed him as a war profiteer, a man who used his technical genius to serve the machinery of oppression. In the underground newspapers of the time, his name often appeared alongside other notorious collaborators of the Vichy regime, a stain that slowly destroyed his reputation. On the 3rd of March 1942, the Billancourt plant was heavily bombed by British aircraft. The official target was to destroy the factory's capacity to supply the German army, but the consequences were far worse than expected. About 350 civilians were killed, hundreds were injured, and many workshops were flattened. After the attack, the German authorities increased direct control over the plant, forcing Renault to comply even more strictly with their production plans. Meanwhile, the resistance groups called the bombing a necessary act, proof that French industry had become a tool of the occupier. Among the people, a question began to grow. Was Louis Renault a victim of coercion, or a man who willingly compromised to protect his empire? Secrets inside the Renault factory. As the war drew to an end, rumors about sabotage within the factory began to spread. Some workers and later historians claimed that Renault had secretly instructed his engineers to damage engines, causing German military trucks to frequently break down on the front lines. There were reports that many shipments from Billancourt were returned due to technical faults. Those who defended him saw this as evidence that Louis Renault was not completely obedient, that he had tried to resist in silence. However, critics argued that it was merely an excuse, that ordinary mechanical errors had been reinterpreted as patriotic acts to cleanse his guilt. No solid evidence was ever found. The only thing that could be confirmed was that during the 4 years of occupation, Renault's factory had supplied products directly to the German army, and that alone was enough to make him the target of public outrage after the liberation. When Allied forces entered Paris in August 1944, Billancourt was plunged into chaos. Workers went on strike, hung tricolour flags, and banners condemning Louis Renault appeared everywhere. He knew that the moment of judgment had come. In a private meeting with his relatives, Renault said that he had only done what was necessary to keep tens of thousands of people from being sent to Germany, that he had not profited from the war, and that if he was guilty, it was for believing that reason and economics could stand apart from politics. But post-liberation, France no longer had room for such justifications. To the public, Louis Renault was not just an individual, he was the symbol of an entire industrial class that had chosen the path of compromise. Whether he had reasons or not, his name was forever tied to a period when the loyalty of the French people was tested to its limit. And when the smoke of war cleared, the inventor once decorated with the Legion of Honor would face a trial without a judge, the court of history and of the public, where the verdict was delivered through collective memory rather than law. The mysterious death of Louis Renault. When Paris was liberated in August 1944, joy filled the boulevards, but with it came the anger that had been suppressed for 4 years of occupation. The people sought out those considered collaborators, and among those names, Louis Renault stood at the top. The man once celebrated as a great inventor, who had contributed to victory in the First World War, was now seen as a symbol of betrayal in the Second. Amid that wave of fury, Renault chose to surrender. At the end of September 1944, he presented himself to the French authorities, declaring, "I have nothing to hide. I did what I had to do to protect my company and my employees." In his first statement, he insisted that he had not sought profit during the war, that all production was intended to prevent his workers from being sent to Germany. However, in the eyes of the provisional government, such explanations were not enough. He was imprisoned at Fresnes prison, which had previously held resistance fighters captured by the Germans. The reversal of fate made many call it the justice of history. Fresnes at that time was overcrowded, chaotic, and filled with an atmosphere of revenge. Renault, at the age of 67, his health already weak, was held in harsh conditions, denied contact with lawyers or family for many days. On the 24th of October 1944, only 1 month after his arrest, Louis Renault died in a military hospital in Paris. The death certificate listed the cause as acute uremia, a severe kidney complication. But almost immediately, rumors spread across France that he had been beaten in prison, that his death was not due to illness. When his body was taken for burial, his wife, Christiane Renault, noticed an injury around her husband's neck, and several witnesses later confirmed they had seen clear signs of bruising. An X-ray examination later revealed a fractured cervical vertebra, a detail that deepened the suspicions. Even so, no official investigation was ever conducted. The country was busy rebuilding, and people wanted to close the past as quickly as possible. Louis Renault, once a national pride, passed away in silence, without a funeral, without farewell words, leaving behind only one question: was he a traitor, or a victim of a post-war thirst for revenge? post-war justice and the Renault legacy. The death of Louis Renault did not close the case, but opened a new chapter, one of punishment and possession. Only a few months after his death, on the 1st of January 1945, the Provisional Government of France issued a decree nationalizing all Renault factories. The company's name was changed to Régie Nationale des Usines Renault, Renault, meaning National Corporation of Renault Factories. The official reason was that the owner had voluntarily collaborated with the enemy. Unlike other corporations that had engaged in similar actions, the Renault family did not receive any compensation. Madame Christiane and her son Jean-Louis appealed multiple times, claiming that the confiscation of property was illegal because there had been no lawful conviction against Louis Renault. However, the government firmly upheld its decision. In the eyes of the state, nationalization was not only a personal punishment, but also a symbolic act representing the moral purification of France after the war. In the years that followed, Louis Renault's name was erased from all official company records. His portraits, once displayed in meeting rooms, were taken down. The plaques honoring his contributions during the First World War were placed in storage. Although Renault as a brand continued to grow and became a pillar of the French automobile industry, its founder was covered by the thick dust of oblivion. But history rarely ends with a single verdict. From the late 20th century, many historians began to re-examine the case. They pointed out that compared to many other industrialists who also collaborated with Germany, Louis Renault was treated more harshly, perhaps because his company was too large and of too great strategic value. Some scholars believe that the French government took advantage of the opportunity to take over a powerful corporation without paying compensation. Others maintain that despite political factors, the nationalization was justified, since it could not be denied that the Renault factories had served the occupying forces for 4 years. 8 decades have passed, and the case of Louis Renault remains one of the most deeply debated subjects in modern French history. He stands both as a symbol of industrial genius and as a cautionary example of the thin line between survival and betrayal. His legacy lives on in every car that bears the diamond-shaped Renault logo, yet his name, the creator of those machines, remains on the margins of glory, as a reminder that history is not written only by success, but also by the mistakes that an era could not forgive. Today, as we drive a car bearing his name, are we inheriting both the legacy and the tragedy that history left behind? Was Louis Renault a traitor, a victim of his time, or simply a man trapped between the logic of an engineer and the storm of politics? The answer perhaps lies not in court records or post-war reports, but in how each generation chooses to look at the past, through judgment or through the effort to understand.